Coal, iron ore and heavy minerals mining company Exxaro Resources is the largest domestic mining company in South Africa with a market cap of 74 billion rand. Apart from its non-managed stake in Kumba Iron Ore, Exxaro is a major player in coal for Eskom power stations and for the export market. It is also moving into power generation in a JV with Tata. The group has a price to earnings ratio of 12 and a dividend yield of 3.8%. And of course we have got Tronox, which listed on the New York Stock Exchange yesterday. It wasn't a very good listing.
Yeah, but you know, to be fair, that heavy minerals, Tronox, Tiox, you know, the stuff they take out of the beach and turn into paint is utterly irrelevant when you talk about Exxaro, because Exxaro is basically a coal and iron ore company. And as you mentioned there, the iron ore stake is a totally unmanaged interest of enormousness and marvelousness with regard to its stake in Kumba Iron Ore, or Sishen Iron Ore, the mine out in the western provinces. So that's all good and well, but they don't really have anything to do with that. They just get a big fat check once a year. When it comes to the coal, they've got the pick of the South African relationship mines with Eskom. They got the contract to provide the coal for the new Medupi field up near Ellisras, now called Lephalale. So they're in the prime position. But for me, I wonder whether they aren't getting totally, get confused and sort of following all sorts of funny things with regard to power generation and trying to buy iron ore assets in Australia and so on and so forth. So I worry a bit about them. But 74 billion, big company, big dividends, big success story, big fat margins. There's a lot to like.
Well, there we go. Paul is worried about them. Craig, from your perspective, are you concerned about Sipho Nkosi and his team?
Well, I think they made a decision to get rid of some of the mineral sands and the base metal sides, your zinc. They got a fairly good price there, 971 million or so. And what they did now with base metals was have this listing which we spoke about, which isn't really, in my mind, so insignificant, because if my back of the matchbox calculations are correct, it's a good 22-23% of the market cap of Exxaro at the moment. Obviously wonders where the share price will go, because it hasn't been a successful listing. But it's probably the best that they could have done with those assets.
Well, let's talk now a little bit about the energy partnership with Tata. Now, isn't that relatively proactive given the electricity supply side constraints we've experienced in South Africa?
Sure. And we know that for one reason or another, while the management of Eskom would rather do everything themselves, government has decided that they like the idea of private participation in the South African power industry, so they've looked for other players to come in with renewable stuff. And wherever you have somebody using coal or having some kind of industrial process, they want people to look at, selling power back to the grid and so on and so forth. So Exxaro, given their coal assets and given their interests in, issues such as coal gasification and methane gas in the presence in coal fields, has said, yes, let's kind of get involved with this. They've got the balance sheet to fund it. But, power generation is not everybody's idea of a reliable industry and to be in. It generally ends up being a cost-plus type thing, because utilities really don't want, kind of variable margins and variable costs. So Eskom,
Listen, with Eskom, it's variable margins, variable costs on a regular basis. That's what they're fighting against.
They want the customers to pay, as much as possible. But on the supply side, Eskom would prefer to have people that give them regular contributions to base load, who are always there, always reliable, and that, kind of work on a cost-plus type basis. So I'm ambivalent. There are lots of people bidding to try and be providers of electricity to the South African grid, but the regime is a little bit unstable. They're talking about prices higher than Eskom's existing cost of production. Eskom would like to do Kusile and then another 3 or 4 like that if it was left to them. So I just think it's a tricky type of environment, not a dead cert.
An ambivalent Paul Theron we've got here on the energy play from Exxaro. Craig.
What I think would be quite interesting is in the DRC, they're tying up with Tata Power for a hydroelectric plant there. So maybe they'll learn a few things from Tata Power, who have had experience in India and other areas. And, one has to wait and see. But there's certainly an opportunity which I like. It gives the group a little bit more diversification. So it is a bit of a wait and see, and Paul's concerns are quite correct. But I think DRC presents other opportunities now too, because they're talking about then getting a rail of the iron ore into the DRC, etc. So as they spread their tentacles, so opportunities present themselves.
I want to talk about valuations here.
Look, if I was the company's advisor, which
you are not.
I would say to them, forget all these crazy dreams. Just unbundle your stake in Sishen, do a deal with Anglo and shoot that iron ore stake to your shareholders. Then take the coal mines, take the top half of your coal assets and sell those to Billiton or to Anglo or some global player like Glencore or Xstrata. Then take all the other rubbish and just sell it to anybody who will buy it. I can tell you, if you do that, you will unlock value far greater than all the buggering about that they have in mind with regard to new projects and so on. You know, what has happened here is that this entity was created out of the bones of the Kumba Resources assets because Eskom mining basically had all of these marvelous assets along the way. And so it came to life, and Sipho Nkosi is a talented, dynamic, ambitious guy, so obviously he wants to paddle his own canoe. But I honestly think if it was just a naked case of how to maximize shareholder returns, that's what they do.
Do you agree with Paul that they need to really focus here, Craig?
Yeah, look, absolutely, but you can't fault them for creating value along the way anyway. I think over the last 4 or 5 years, they've got a good 20% return on equity. I was thinking back in 1999, I think I could have picked up Eskom for about R1.40 a share, and you think, take the unbundling of Kumba, Exxaro, everything, it's quite frightening the returns that you've got out of that. So, I think there are questions, but there have been some positive things. I mean, considering sands, mineral sands, and the Namibia sands and KZ sands, what else could they do? They tried to find a buyer. I think this listing could prove to be interesting.
You didn't answer my question on valuation. You just sidetracked it and went somewhere else. Do you not want to talk to me about valuation?
9 rands a share, which is not too bad. It was at 53, I think, is the 5-year low, and then it was at about sort of 210. So it's trading near its all-time highs. So it's not doing badly. But that's, of course, on the back of the substantial gains in Kumba and so on and so forth. But I think the valuation, like I say, could be sharply higher if they went the unbundling route. Then you might get 300 or 400.
So you did actually answer my question. I wasn't listening. Hot or not, Craig?
Yeah, I think you're going to see short-term resistance. The high today was 209.99. When I looked, it might have gone past that. But long term, it's definitely a hot stock. Yeah.
Hot or not?
Well, if I could organize 74 billion to buy out the existing shareholders, then do my secret plan, then it would be hot. Otherwise, not.